Hi, it's Tuesday, November the 12th, Wednesday, November the 13th in the Philippines, and we have several systems active in the tropics to talk about. We have Invest 99L in the Central Caribbean. The system is likely to develop and impact several areas within the Western Caribbean over the next week. We've also got tropical storms Usagi and Manyi in the West Pacific. Both are forecast to impact the Philippines in the next week, and I'll leave timestamps to those parts of the video in the description so you can skip after the Atlantic if this is not the part you're looking for, or information on those two West Pacific storms. Well, let's go ahead and get right into it with Invest 99L, newly designated this afternoon by the National Hurricane Center. And you can see that we have a whole broad area of low pressure that's developed now in the Central Caribbean. We have more northerly winds here west of Jamaica, turning more southerly on the east side of all of this thunderstorm activity near the coastline of Colombia. And this is outlining a broad area of low pressure with a tropical wave on the north side, which has been propagating westward over the past several days through the eastern Caribbean. And this tropical wave is very important for the development of 99L. This is the actual invest. As the system has been coming west to the Caribbean, it's been much more convectively active than model guidance like the GFS had anticipated. The GFS had shown more shallow and weak convection with this wave as it came west, and because of that, the wave was much weaker on the GFS model. And while it still showed development, the reason we're seeing a lot of models now really pick up on tropical development from the system is because it's been more convectively active. So the axis is much sharper. You can see a very strong southerly flow south of Haiti moving into this tropical wave axis. And somewhere in here, it's kind of hard to tell, it does move more northeasterly, showing you that more sharp wave axis within here. And with a sharper wave axis, this has a much greater probability of actually forming into a tropical cyclone than if it was a more weaker area of a rotation, if the GFS had come true with this not being as convectively active as it came west. And for that reason, the Hurricane Center has increased odds drastically on the system for development over the next week. Now 90% chance of development over the next 7 days, and near certainty in development odds. And 2-day odds have also come up, now 60%. And it looks very likely here that by the end of the week, we'll have a tropical depression or tropical storm. And if you're wondering, the next name on the list is Sarah. And so now the question is, where's the system going to go? What's the forecast for this system? Now, it's a bit difficult to say exactly what's going to happen because we are still on this development phase. We don't fully know everything about this system, but we can take some good guesses. We can see that the system on the north side, this tropical wave, is much more convectively active, like I mentioned, the models that anticipated. And this is being a stronger trough axis, a more confined area of vorticity or spin. And because of that, this is probably going to be where we see our tropical development take place of an area of low pressure. So usually in this type of scenario, you start to wonder, okay, where will exactly the area of low pressure develop? In this case, we might have a little bit more certainty because of this tropical wave. Now, it's still possible. We'll have to see this. We do have some convection on the south side of this whole gyre. We'll have to see if this tries to spin up anything at the surface. But as of right now, models are pretty consistently showing this northern lobe developing into whatever tropical system 99L becomes. And so we can take this and we can sort of extrapolate where the system may go. And one aspect that the system is going to have is going to be embedded within this whole broad gyre for at least the next several days. So as this develops, it's going to not really go where you would expect it to. Normally, if a system is here, you expect it to go northwest. But this system is more so going to go southwest towards the coastline of Central America. And you can see this happen if we look at the GFS, the current operational run. And you can see here's our broad low. Here's the vorticity beginning to build south of Jamaica tomorrow. And we have an area of low pressure form into a tropical cyclone. This is by Friday on the model. And you can see that track. It's moving more southwest because it's embedded within this broad gyre that we have. And so what's going to happen is because we have this whole larger gyre, this more smaller low is going to revolve around this larger low. And so this does leave a little bit of uncertainty on exactly where is it going to go and how far southwest is it going to get, because that's going to be very important or the long-term future of this system. We have a bit of a split right now where the GFS is showing this staying offshore Central America, and because of that, it's able to, and I can show you this, intensify, and next week we end up with a very strong hurricane in the Caribbean, which eventually begins to gain latitude, potentially into the Gulf of Mexico. But if we look at the European model, and I'll show you the current run of this, we get a little bit closer to Central America on this forecast. And because of that, the system is not able to get as strong as the GFS shows. And for that reason, the system stays much further south, and we end up with a system that comes into Belize or Mexico, and then eventually does enter the Gulf of Mexico, likely in a more weakened state than what it would be on the GFS's scenario. Now, you may have picked out there at the beginning of this was the European run from last night. This is a scenario of the European showing a GFS scenario, a very strong European run. And this is important because this is showing us that this is not just a GFS bias showing a strong hurricane. This is actually a possibility. As weird as it may seem, in mid-November, there's a possibility that we have a stronger hurricane coming through here. And while there is uncertainty on exactly how much interaction we have with Central America, and that will certainly dictate how strong it is in long term, this is important for anyone in Cuba and Mexico to take close attention to. It is still hurricane season, of course, and make sure you have your preparedness kits ready just in case you need to enact them if the system does come your way. Now, if we look at the long-term forecast of this, I know there's going to be questions on, where could it go after this? Could it come up towards Florida if it's coming into the Gulf of Mexico? You may have picked it out there on the GFS that it was coming east, or on the European rather, it was coming east towards the Florida Peninsula. The long-term pattern does seem to favor this system gaining latitude. You can see why if we look at the pattern over the United States. This is out to 5 days, so this is this weekend. We have an area of high pressure building across the southwestern U.S., or southeastern U.S. rather, and a big deep trough digging in over the southwest. This is a highly amplified pattern, and this pattern is going to be progressing a little bit. This trough that's dug down way into the Pacific, it's going to swing east, and as this happens, this is going to set a western edge of the high pressure system over the southeast US, and you can see our hurricane here on the model is now gaining latitude. And with this kind of a track, with the area of high pressure being positioned like that, with this trough digging in, this would be a scenario where a system comes into the Gulf and recurves somewhere along the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. Now, one thing I need to stress here, this is getting very far out in the forecast period. This is out to 7 days, and we're not even really in the Gulf of Mexico. We're just entering the Gulf of Mexico by this time. So there's still a lot that can change here. And for those in Florida, it's certainly not anything to panic over right now, although it's a good reminder, like I said with Cuba and Mexico, it's still hurricane season, and I know we've been hit hard with Helene and Milton this hurricane season, but you still need to be aware, just in case the system does end up coming up into the Gulf, like on these model forecasts. And you can see the spread that we have if we go and look at the GFS ensemble spread. This is showing you red numbers being the hurricane, and the spread 5 days is already quite significant. We have some models here by Haiti and Jamaica, others by Central America. And as we go towards 7 days, you can see there is now a considerable spread on where the system is in actuality, but also how strong it is. If it's taking a track like the operational GFS and misses most of these land masses, likely to get more of a stronger system coming into the southern Gulf. But we also have storms that interacted with Cuba. These are much weaker. There's also some outlier members going into the Bahamas because they're so far east. But also we have members much weaker here in the central Gulf of Mexico because they were weaker like the European and spent a lot of time over the Yucatan Peninsula. And while these would likely still come up towards the Florida Peninsula, these would be way weaker overall compared to if we have more of a scenario where it's missing Cuba and Mexico. But the main reason I'm showing you this is to show you the uncertainty that we have. And there's a lot of questions, and these questions will only be answered with time, as is usual with these storms as we look out in the forecast period. And my key message really today for those in Cuba, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Central America, Mexico, and the northeastern Gulf Coast of the US, is just make sure you're watching the system, have your hurricane preparedness kit ready, just in case you need to enact it. And hopefully this will be the last we have to talk about of a system coming out of the Caribbean this hurricane season. We are about month and a half, or sorry, half a month away from the hurricane season ending. And usually by this time of year, we do tend to shut things down. So hopefully this will be it. And then we can just recover from everything that we've had in this hyperactive hurricane season. That's all that I've got for 99L. We'll talk about this one as the week progresses and into next week as the system develops. But like I mentioned at the beginning, this is not the only system we have active. We also have Tropical Storm Usagi in the West Pacific, and this system is taking a very similar track to Taraji a few days ago, now coming towards the Philippines. Now, the system has been struggling in the face of some stronger shear than models had anticipated over the past several days, and this will be a trend you'll see, a pattern from the GFS, where it had analyzed Taraji a little bit weaker than it had actually been in reality, and still is in reality. And I talked about this a couple of days ago because a European had showed this potentially being an issue for Usagi as it came west. And you can see this if we look at water vapor imagery. Here's the big view. We still have this upper level high pressure system draped right over it, but you can see this convection north of the storm being pushed off towards the south. And if we look at the GFS upper level wind plot, we have more southwesterly flow, or more west southwesterly flow with this upper high, where the system is tracking more a west northwest track, and this is causing a little bit of a northerly shear, which has been stopping the system from completing its inner core structure over the past couple of days. Now, the shear is forecast to relax regardless, and we are likely to see some intensification of the system into a typhoon as it comes into the northern Philippines. But the good news is here, this has likely saved us from a very strong typhoon like the GFS was showing several days ago. And even now the GFS has come down on the peak intensity. This would still be significant. This is still, a significant typhoon coming over an area that just dealt with 2 typhoons, but we'll take what we can get here with a weaker storm coming west through here now on this forecast. Now, you'll notice that we are beginning to trend more north on this forecast compared to a couple of days ago. This also has partly to do with Taraji further west. With the system being stronger than the GFS had anticipated, the high pressure system north of Usagi is not able to get as far west as it was on prior model runs. So because of that, the western edge of this bridge is a little bit further east, and it's allowing Usagi now to gain latitude as it gets towards the Philippines. And now we're talking about some threats to the southern Japanese islands and Taiwan as the system begins to recurve and come north. Now, a benefit of the time of year is that we do have more cold fronts making it far south right now, and this has cooled off the water, especially west of Taiwan and north of the southern Japanese islands. So the system will likely be weakening to some extent, as well as there may be some increased wind shear as it begins to recurve. But we could still have, strong tropical storm coming through here. And Taiwan is another area this this typhoon season that's been hit very hard. And we certainly don't need any additional rainfall in this high terrain where we just have had, in the past month, a couple of typhoons come through and dump a lot of heavy rainfall there. And you can see this recurvature occur on the Pagasa forecast cone. You can see they're expecting, again, more gradual intensification. Maybe we get a phase of more quick intensification before landfall, but we're not looking at anything too strong. We're not looking at a super typhoon coming through here. But you can see landfall expected sometime Thursday afternoon on this forecast. And there's still some uncertainty on exactly does it make landfall in Luzon or not. That has to do with the exact position of the high pressure system further north. May also have something to do with Taraji, how strong it is so far even today. It is stronger than the GFS has anticipated over the past couple of days, so we'll see how that goes. And that also could impact the forecast for the southern Japanese islands and Taiwan, as if it doesn't interact heavily with Luzon, it could be slightly stronger as it comes through here and recurves. But regardless, weakening tropical storm expected to come through the southern Japanese islands and Taiwan over the next several days into this weekend and early next week. And then by then, we start to focus on the next system behind it, which is Tropical Storm Man-Yi. And we talked about this one as well a couple of days ago, how it was forecast to really get sheared apart as it came through the Mariana Islands. And again, a pattern with models like the GFS, the system is maintaining itself much better than that model had anticipated. And we see this morning that we have still a formidable tropical storm, sheared but formidable, that is now likely to make it past this stronger shear, and models are now showing this intensifying into yet another typhoon as it comes west towards the northern Philippines. You can see this as we go throughout the next several days. You can see the shear is still impacting it. You can see this northerly or northwesterly shear impacting our storm right now. But as we go throughout the next several days, as Usagi begins to weaken, that area of high pressure begins to weaken a bit. And we now begin to get new high pressure development right over Man-Yi as it comes west. And in this case, this allows the system to intensify quite a bit as it comes west. The GFS is going very strong with this. Now, I will add a little bit of caution here. If Usagi is able to be a little bit stronger here, perhaps we get a little bit more shear, perhaps we can luck out again in the Philippines. But the main point being here is that we're not done even after Usagi. We may have a fourth one on the way. And then the Philippines, I know it's tiring to hear this, but you just got to keep your preparations in place for this next one as it comes through. You did see there that it is expected to now on this model turn north a little bit. It may have something to do as well with Usagi. You can see it's still 988 millibars here south of Taiwan as it comes west. If it is still that strong by this time in the forecast, we may be able to, in a similar way with what's going on with Usagi right now, limit the westward extent of the high pressure system up north steering it, and that may allow a recurvature. And perhaps we can, in a lucky way, get the system to recurve and weaken and not really impact many land areas at all. But for now, we have to be prepared for the possibility of another typhoon coming through here. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center does have this occurring, with the system recovering from the wind shear over the next couple of days, intensifying into a very strong typhoon. This would be a Category 4 equivalent on the Saffir-Simpson scale at peak, but weakening a little bit, perhaps due to upwelling from our 3 typhoons that have come through here in the northern Philippines, but still, a typhoon coming through an area that just got hit by 2 or 3 typhoons, certainly not something you want to see. But the good news is here, at least right now, and I can show you this on the GFS as we go further out into the forecast period, after Man-Yi, we might be getting into a more quiet period here. Maybe some storm system developing way out there in the tropical Pacific on this model. But as of right now, it looks like after Man-Yi, we can finally quiet things down into late November. And hopefully that will be the end of our typhoon season. It does still run throughout the end of the year, but maybe we can luck out and get rid of any potential other typhoon threats. I'm sure we're tired of it here, especially in regions like Taiwan, Japan, and the Philippines. We've been hit so hard these past couple of years. That's all that I've got for today. That was a lot, I know, but lots going on in the tropics. It's a very active period, so I'll have more videos on 99L, Usagi, and Man-Yi over the next several days into the weekend and into next week. Stay safe in all the areas that are going to be impacted by these systems over the next several days. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching.